I'm building a modern highway overpass on Ron's Trains and Things right now. Hi, I'm Ron of Ron's Trains and Things, and if you'd like to see more model railroad tips, tools, and techniques, then be sure and subscribe down below and click that little bell icon so you can catch future videos. I have two locations on my layout where I'm building interstate highway overpasses over the railroad tracks. One is an interstate that just fits into the scene in the particular place that I model, and so it's kind of a necessary scene break. The other one is going to mask where the main line goes through the wall into staging on the lower level or east end of my layout. I started one of these projects about 2 years ago, and I've just never really gotten back to it. Well, today we're going to go back to that project and we're going to finish up that interstate highway bridge, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. I'm interested to know how you mask places where your main line goes through the wall or out of a scene, going into staging or to another part of the layout. Tell me what you do in the comment section down below. Let me go over to the layout and show you the spot that we're looking at, and then we'll get to the workbench and we'll get started. This is the area I'm working in today, and you can see this highway bridge that has been already built and put in place. This is half of what is going to be Interstate 820, the north loop on the north side of Fort Worth as it goes through Saginaw, Texas. So obviously 4-lane highway, interstate highway, and need two bridges. So today I'm going to be working on the second bridge here. And then of course these bridges on this end will come up to an abutment, and I'll be using foam to build the hill for the ramp where this will come down towards the fascia up towards the front. Here I have the bridge that I built previously, and I'm going to be using it as a bit of a guide for some measurements and angles and such. I built this bridge as I'm going to build the one to match it from a Rick's Products bridge kit. This is the modern 150-foot highway overpass. You can buy the shorter single sections of these bridges, but this actually comes with 3 sections, 3 50-foot sections of bridge, and the pures that you need. I actually have 2 of these kits, and I'm actually going to need parts from both of these kits that I have today. I also, because as you've heard me say many times before, I never throw anything away, I also have the leftover parts from when I built this bridge. The one thing that I did to this bridge to modify it, that I'll also be doing to today's bridge, was I actually widened this bridge just a little bit. I think you can see maybe in the camera where the yellow stripe and the white stripe are here. Those are right on seams, and between those 2 stripes is the full width of these bridges as they come. These are called modern highway overpasses, but they're pretty narrow. They would be 2 lanes with no shoulder whatsoever. Well, very modern overpasses, especially on interstate highways, will usually have a little bit of a shoulder. Maybe not a full shoulder, but a little bit of breathing room between the lane and the concrete sides of the bridge itself. And so what I did on this kit was I cut 2 strips of just 40 thousandths styrene, and I cut them 4 scale feet wide. And you can see those right here, these strips that run all the way along from the white stripe all the way out to the edge of the bridge, side of the bridge, same way on this side from the yellow stripe all the way out. It's a 4-foot wide strip, and so I'm going to be doing that with these kits today too, to make those match and to make them look a little more realistic and prototypical. So let's go ahead and open up one of our kits here, and you can see just exactly what we have in these as we get ready to do our building. In here we see 3 of these highway sections, and you can see they have this little bit of a lip of an overlap where they overlap each other. I'm going to show you from the side, which gives you a nice way to make a solid joint, but it gives you a good flat mated surface on the top. So we'll be using all three of these sections, and then I'll be pulling one section out of the other kit to add on, and then cutting that at an angle down here for my added length. And then as we get in here, we've got these round pieces, which are the pilasters in the support piers. These square kind of angled pieces are the base of those piers. And then of course we have all of the what they call flat beams. It's kind of a channel beam, and also the I-beams. And we'll be working with all of those just a little bit later. So the first step that I want to take is I want to cut all of the pieces that I'm going to be using from the sprues, and then I want to clean up any flash I have from the injection gates or any other areas where there might be any flaws. So I'm just going to come in. I've got this great pair of flush cutting sprue cutters, and I'm just going to come in with them and cut all of these as close and flush as I can, and get all of my pieces cut out. And I'm going to kind of sort them out, and then I'm going to come in with some sandpaper and remove the flashing. And you can see, like for instance here, there's a little piece of flashing that's sticking up, and that's got a big enough piece that I'm going to actually come in first with my hobby knife and a number 11 blade and just kind of scrape the top of that off. I don't want to get into the model piece, but just scrape some of that flashing off. And then again, you see all of these little circles or dimples that are part of the casting process. And I'm just going to use my 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to sand that inside of there lightly until all of those circles just disappear. Now, if I'm careful, on this particular project, if I don't get those sanded perfectly smoothly, I can kind of hide them, because there are no circles, there's no flash on the other side of this beam. And if you look on the bottom, you're going to see that as you look at this bridge, you're going to see the outside of this beam, you're going to see the outside of this beam, you're going to see that the other beams are in there, but it's going to be very difficult to see the actual surfaces of these beams once it's on the layout. So it'll be a little bit forgiving in that sense as far as those beams are concerned, but I still want to get them sanded down fairly smoothly. I've got all of the pieces cut out from the sprues, and I went ahead and opened my other kit and pulled out the pieces that I'm going to need from it, which include one bridge deck piece, and I needed an additional two side or K-rail type pieces, and I needed two additional of the flat or C-shaped beams. There were enough, there's some extra of the I-beams in the kit, so I had enough of the I-beams to take care of that extra section. I've spent the last 2 hours sanding all the pieces for this bridge. Sorry I didn't show that. I know a lot of you really wanted to watch me sand parts for 2 hours. We want to make sure that on our bridge, the square end has one of these ends where that L doesn't show, where it's a good surface all the way out, like I have here. And then we'll cut that end off down here on the other end. So we want to make sure that is the case. And then also we're going to use those for gluing. And we're ready to start gluing this deck together. And we're going to assemble this whole kit with liquid plastic cement. You can use 10X, or you can use Ambroid Pro Weld. What I'm using today is some FlexiFile, PlastiWeld. Plastruck makes some good stuff. Any of those will work great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little of that plastic weld on the flat part of this overlap, and then I'm actually going to assemble this upside down. So I'm going to take my etched pieces and turn them upside down, and I'm going to take a little applicator brush. I'm just going to put a little bit of the plastic cement right along there. I think I'll also put just a little bit along this side. Stick those together, make sure they're good and flush on the edges, like so. Press them together this way, press them down. And now if this was a joint that would show, I would use my touch and flow applicator to apply that glue, but this is going to be underneath the bridge. It's not going to show at all. So I'm just going to use that brush applicator. I'm just going to hold those together for a few seconds, make sure that the top joint looks really good, and it does. And that will continue to set up, and we can go ahead and go to our next piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn my bridge deck over. I think I want to go ahead and mark and cut the angle on this end of this bridge. To do that, I want to make sure that I get the right angle, but I also want to make sure I get it in the right place. And I'm just going to use a steel ruler here just to keep the ends square. This is square, and this is square, and I want about a ½ inch of space in between them. And my cutting mat here has these lines on it, and they are a ½ inch grid, so I'm going to just use those lines to approximate that ½ inch spot. I can just take this other steel rule, as long as I hold these good and still and in good position, which is easier said than done. I'm just going to make a mark right where that is. Come in with my steel ruler right on that mark, and we're just going to score this really, really good and snap it. And I don't have to use too much pressure here at first. I just want to make a nice score, and I'm going to score it several times. Okay, and that made a nice score. Now I don't want to put pressure on this joint that I just made, so I'm going to hold the little piece there and just snap that in two like that. So I'm going to come in with a sanding stick, and I'm just going to smooth that up a little bit. I apologize for that last segment and the sound. Had a little bit of microphone issue, but I think I've got that fixed now. Now I'm ready to cut the shoulders for my bridge deck, and I have some large sheets of 40,000 styrene, and I'm going to use my scale ruler, and literally I'm just going to make a mark of a piece that is 4 scale feet wide. Now I've got my 2 shoulders cut. I want to make sure that if there's any burr left that I can feel at all, that faces towards the bottom of the bridge, and also the one that has my nice factory edge on it, I want to put it towards the bridge deck. I've taken my bridge deck again and turned it upside down because the styrene is just slightly thinner than the material that the bridge deck is made out of. And I'm just going to cement these with that same liquid cement right to the sides of this bridge. Now, obviously I'm going to be cutting this end because of the angle, but I'm going to leave a little bit to go past the square end as well, and then I can come back and cut that at a later time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just tacking it. I'm just going to put some cement in a spot and put some plastic cement in a spot. Make sure that everything is nice and flush and you don't have any problems. Okay, that's got that one just tacked into place, and I want to be careful not to put too much pressure on it because again it's just barely in place. Now I don't know if you can see that on camera, but that is nice and flush with the top. Looks like I got a really nice seam there, and I think that is going to work really well. So now I can come back here again and make a full bead of cement along there. Now I think we're ready to do the other side. And yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, that cement has had some time to set up now, and so I'm coming back. I've got my finest sanding stick. This is very, very fine emery paper on here. And I'm just going to take those spots where the glue bled through a little bit, and I'm going to just touch them with this sandpaper. It's had a time to set up, so it's not gooey. And what that's doing is that's taking the shine off of those spots. Where that glue kind of makes the plastic shiny. And then what I'm also going to do is, because these shoulders that I've put on here are pretty slick and shiny, the styrene, I'm going to use, again, this super fine sanding stick, and I'm just going to go over that, stroke, one direction, and just going to kind of rough it a bit and take a little bit of that slick surface away. So I'm going to come in again with my steel ruler, just flush it up with that angle here. I'm going to mark those two shoulders, and then I'm also going to come in and just score them a few times and snap them off. There's that. There's that one with my sanding stick, and just smooth that down a little bit, and do the exact same thing on this end. And there is our bridge deck. Now we're ready to start installing our support beams. And again, there are two different kinds. There are I-beams, and then there are flat or C-shaped beams. And the I-beams will go on the outside edges of the bridge and down the center, and then the flat or C-shaped beams will go in between them underneath each of the two lanes. I've taken one set of these I-beams, and I've gone through and just matched them up to make sure the ends match up. For some of them, it doesn't hurt to do just a touch of light sanding just to kind of square them up so that they match up well. So I'm going to take my bridge piece, I'm going to turn it upside down, and I have to install these beams on the original bridge deck. Remember, this 40,000 styrene is just a little bit thinner, so if I put it out there, the bottoms of these beams are not going to be flush all the way across. It's not going to sit on any abutment that I might use quite as well as I'd like. It's not going to sit flush on an abutment. So I'm going to take the beam and I'm going to line it up right along the edge of the original bridge deck, and I want to flush it up with the end of the bridge. Now again, I've got this little step here that's made for if I was adding more bridge on to that end, and I'm going to flush this up all the way out to that outside edge of that, not back here on the step part, but all the way to the end. But this particular beam's got just a little bit of a curve to it, and so I'm going to start off by gluing one end. Get some cement down under that end, and I'll hold that in place for a minute until it kind of starts to set up. I think I'll go ahead and put a little bit along the outside edge there. Now that has started to take a hold and bite, this end here I'm going to push in. Actually, I'm going to glue this right here because that's even. Now this end here's got just a little curl to it. I'll pull it in a little bit and apply some cement right there and right there. Okay, and there's my first beam in place. Now that we've got the two outside beams on, we want to put our I-beam down the center. And so I'm going to mark the middle here. I'm going to measure, I'm using my scale ruler, and measuring between those is exactly 20 scale feet. So I'm going to make a mark at 10 scale feet here. And I'm going to take my steel rule here, and I'm just going to make a line. And that will be the center line of that beam. I'm going to go ahead and mark where the flat beams are going to go also, just because it's going to be easier now than it will be later. And I want to go by the center. So from the center of this beam to the center of this beam is about 10 feet, and to the center of it's 20. So to the center, I'm going to make a mark at 5 feet here, mark at 15 feet. Do the same down here. Okay, and there are my marks. And I'm going to do the I-beam first, which goes down the center, and then we'll come back and do the flat beams. Again, I'm just going to line these up with the end there, but I'm going to line them up right on the center of that pencil mark. Like so. And now we have all of our beams glued onto the bottom of our bridge. Now I've got just a few spots of the cement, especially along those seams, that's a little bit shiny. And so again, I'm going to come back with my sanding stick. These aren't really going to show, so I wasn't overly concerned about them. But you know, if you want to make a really good looking model, in case somebody ever picks it up, or bends down and makes that glance underneath a bridge on your layout, can help those a lot just by sanding a little bit. It takes the shininess off of that little dab of glue, and also on these seams, it'll give you an almost seamless look to those joints where those beams come together. Now the next step is going to be to cut off this excess I have right here. And for that, I'm going to bring in my handy dandy razor saw, and I'm just going to put it right here along the angle, and very carefully I'm going to hold this upright, and I want to very carefully just saw my way through those. I want to hold that bridge very still. I don't want to get a lot of lateral motion, or I can break the beams loose from the deck. And there's one loose, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And there we go. Now I'm going to just use a little bit of sanding stick and just clean that up a little bit right there. Now we're going to start installing the sides of our bridges. And again, like with the I-beams, I'm going to touch the ends of these just a little bit with a sanding stick, just to make sure they square up. And then these actually have a little ridge that will rest right on top of the edge of the bridge, and then it wraps down around the side to give you this nice finished look on the outside. And so we'll be just basically resting that ledge right on the edge of the bridge, put a bead of glue right along this on top, and then when that has had some time to set up, probably after we get all of them installed, we'll go and put another bead of glue along underneath the bridge. But for now, we're just going to get them tacked on from the top like this. And again, just with a touch and flow applicator and a fine bead of glue. Let that set for a minute or so. And we have our first bridge rail or bridge wall in place. Our bridge piers basically consist of a couple of simple boxes connected by our pilasters. And you see that the base box consists of two of these kind of L-shaped pieces which go together generally like so. They have beveled edges to make them fit together into a nice box. And they also have a flat side on one end and a beveled end on the other. We want to make sure with the two boxes we get the beveled ends up together on both of them. And so literally I'm just going to take this box, I'm going to hold it together nice and square, and then I'm going to take an applicator with some cement and just apply a little bit of cement into these corners where this comes together. And then I'm going to turn it over and do the exact same thing on the bottom so that we'll have a good solid glue joint. And then as we turn it back upright so that the beveled part here is pointing up, we have these pieces that have the holes in them for the pilasters to go into, and they are beveled on one side also, so they'll fit right into that box. And so then I'm going to hold this, and I'm going to hold this, and I'm going to come in and just apply a little glue to that bevel. I'm saying glue, it's really cement, just on the ends there for now, and get this top piece into place like so. Then I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to get my applicator and I'm going to reach down in here. I'm going to try to put a little more glue. I don't have to get a solid bead all the way across. I just need to get it into some of that bevel in between the holes. This won't have a lot of pressure on it. Just needs to hold together well. These actually have some adjustment to them if you want to adjust the height. And the instructions will say don't glue these in place yet. I will glue them in place ultimately, but I want to make sure that I've got it in place where it goes on the layout and adjusted and the height is just right before I do that. But then there's also a box that goes on the top, and this works the same way. Again, I've got these little L-shaped pieces. They have a bevel. In this case, it's beveled on both sides. And this one is real shallow, so I can glue this one all at once. Touch of my cement, one corner at a time. Again, being very careful not to glue my work to my cutting mat. And then in this case, I've got another piece like the one I had before that has the holes in it, and I've got a solid one. And I'm going to glue the solid one in first. It doesn't really matter which one goes which way, but I do want to kind of make sure that it fits in place. So I'm going to set this in here, make sure that it fits pretty well, and it does fit really well. So I'll turn it over and just apply some glue. I'm going to come in and apply a little bit of cement basically to the ends of this. Here, here, drop this piece into place. And now with that upper box built completely, it just slides onto the pilasters like so. And can push it down into place, and there is one bridge pier. And here is our bridge pieces complete. You can see I've got all three of the piers put together. The bridge deck is complete. I got the sides on the bridge and got those solidly in place. And of course, you saw me put all of the beams on the bottom. And so really this bridge is ready for paint and installation. And we'll cover all that in the next video next week. So be sure and tune in next week as we finish this thing up and get it put in place on the layout. My Loop 820 overpass is coming along nicely. I'm looking forward to getting some paint and weathering on it, getting it striped, and getting it on the location in the layout. Be sure and join me next week as I show you how I do all of those things and we finish up this project. Well, if you enjoyed this video, here's a link to some more videos about kit bashing and scratch building that I know you'll enjoy as well. Be sure and check those out. Well, be sure and check out my description down below where you'll find links to my Amazon page and my Amazon Pick of the Week, as well as my Patreon page and links to where you can connect with me on social media. Well, be sure and join me each Tuesday as I'll be bringing you more great model railroad videos. And I look forward to seeing you then. Lizzie?